Welcome back to spooky season. Yes, this one's very spooky. I'm John Stark from backfrommovieguy.com. And this is Coco. Coco. This is a second look also. Qualifies because I've seen this film before. And I listen, spooky season, I try to always make it so that I have it's mostly horror movies, but I gotta have like some horror comedies. I gotta have maybe like a thriller in there where there's like no gore, ghosts, or anything for people who are just they like really like intense shit, but they don't want the others. They don't want gore. I try to have a little bit of that, a little bit of flavor of that. And I try to have some stuff in here for the whole family. So I haven't reviewed Coco on my channel, even though I've seen it. And it's time to talk about Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. I mean, it's perfect, right? This is perfect timing for this stuff. So, like, happy Halloween, all that stuff. This is Disney Pixar's Coco. Uh, I, I, I don't even know how much of a review of this film this is going to be, except because this film has so many unique experiences for me as a person. For my blind audience, I'm still playing around with flashlight. I could have done lights on for Coco, but I still wanted to give that vibe just because of Halloween. I was like, yeah, I just still wanted to give that vibe for Coco. So, uh, yeah, it is on Disney Plus with audio description, which I thought was delightful. I thought it was really well done, and it brought back everything I remembered seeing. And this is a really odd timing for me. When I say that I saw Coco, I had already been diagnosed with vision loss, and I was starting to lose my vision, and I was starting to lose the ability to, like gradually, like things were getting harder and harder to do and see. So Coco was the last film that I used to go to the theaters a lot by myself. And this was the last film that I drove myself to. There were when I was on the way back, I noticed I couldn't see the lines in the road that define lanes of traffic. Which is weird because like on the way there, I was fine, but there were certain patches of the road where I couldn't see it on the way home, which I've always been able to see before, and I couldn't see it. So I basically reduced my driving to uh, like just I literally worked down the road from where I lived. So I would drive to work and then drive back. And I only did that also for like 2 weeks, and then I gave up on that. And so I stopped driving pretty close to after the release of Coco. But I didn't want to drive out on like big roads or anything like that. So yeah, this is the last film that I took myself to in theaters. So, and it was an experience because when you went and saw Coco in theaters, like opening weekend, you had the Frozen short, you had, 30 minutes of previews, you had a Pixar short, and then you had Coco. I was in theaters easily. I forgot how short this movie actually is because I was in theaters. I was expecting to be in Coco for like 2 hours, easy, because I was in the theater for like 2:30, 2:45, something like that by the time you actually got out. And because the Frozen short was like 30 minutes, and then you have like 30 minutes of trailers. It was like an hour before Coco started. No shit. When we got around to it, it was like an hour because we had so many trailers, and then you also had the Pixar short, and finally at like the hour mark, Coco starts, and you're like, this is unacceptable. Like this is unacceptable. I mean, no. Um, so now I'm watching the film without it, and it's so refreshing to actually be able to accept this film with a normal runtime, and you're like, "Oh my god, it's not an epic." I feel so that totally changed. It changed a lot for me. You have no idea. I actually this is only my second time seeing Coco. So, Yeah, it totally I liked the film before. I like the film, the representation, the storyline. I love I've been thinking so much about like Coco and the world that Coco creates where it's like all you have to do is be remembered. Like the afterlife is basically like if somebody remembers you, you will like you'll live on and you're not forgotten. And if somebody puts your picture up, then you're allowed to cross over on Day of the Dead. So, um, I I like that part of the story, uh, and I think about like what the real world implications of that would be. Like, okay, so if let's say this movie gets it right, and this is exactly what it's like, what the afterlife is like. Like there are some people who it's like, okay, so they've been famous for like decades, centuries, and so they're still down there. Um, then you sort of go into like the biblical thing, and it's like, well, if depending on what you believe in, would like Adam and Eve still be there? Are they like, oh my God, I can't believe we're still here? You know, like what? How are we still here? There can't possibly be like they don't even understand because nobody's putting their photos up, right? Because there weren't any photos. That's the other thing is this film relies on photography, but photography only started at a certain point. So what happened before photography? Did nobody cross over, and then suddenly we figured out what photography was, and then people were like, "Oh my God, we can cross over now! Look at that!" So before there were cameras, no souls crossed over. It was all just based on pure memory. Um, I mean, people have been written in books. You would think that, like, for I know this is like Mexican culture, and so trying to translate that to a wide audience, find somebody who is so recognizable that they would have translated that they would be in the underworld, but so they're playing with like fictitious characters here. But it'd be so cool to just see somebody like, I don't know, Shakespeare, somebody who's universal to everybody, who's just like walking around and been like, I've been here forever. I don't, I don't even understand it. Just like wandering around. Just like, I don't know why I'm here. Like theoretically, my entire line should have died out. Uh, how am I, how am I still here? And then like Miguel's like, well, sir, your plays are like everybody knows who you are. Like your plays are being performed all the time by everybody, and it's like what? Like I mean, there's so much potential. I would love a Coco too if it meant that. If it meant that Miguel could cross back into the underworld and like meet famous people who just don't know why they're there, and they're just like wandering around because nobody's putting their picture up because there is no picture of William Shakespeare. There's like paintings, and then it gets if you go down the rabbit hole of William Shakespeare, people are like, that's not really William Shakespeare. That's, was he even really a real person? There's like a whole conspiracy theory about whether or not he even existed as a person or whether or not he was, like an amalgamation of other people who were ghostwriting. Anyway, so yeah, but I think that would be funny to do it with like all these historical figures, almost like Bill and Ted, but like Coco. Like he goes into the underworld and there are all these famous people there and like historical figures from over the years, and he's running into them and they're like, why am I here? Why? You also realize that means horrible people are still remembered. Like in Coco's world, Hitler is chilling in that world because unfortunately we can't forget him. So that's the sobering truth about the way Coco's underworld works. Because the insinuation is that you're there in the underworld as long as you're remembered. Um, and you are allowed to cross over if you have a photograph. So like, when he's having uh this great battle with the person, I don't know, that's a spoiler. When they're talking about it uh in the film, and he's talking about having to take the photo back, It's so he can cross over. It's not necessarily to keep him from being forgotten, you know. Anyway, so although I was thinking about this the second time through, I was like, if Miguel goes back, wouldn't he remember him? And thus he would stay? Shouldn't your goal just to be get Miguel back and then you'll be remembered? Because he's gonna remember that he was here, right? Because he has to remember, otherwise handing him a photo, like if he forgets as soon as he leaves the underworld, then he's just gonna be holding a photo and he won't know what to do with it, you know? So obviously his brain's not gonna be wiped, but wouldn't him going back keep you there? I don't know. So there are some things watching the film the second time around where I was getting like really over analytical, but at the same time it was opening up all this like world of possibilities for me. Where and I've been thinking about this ever since I saw Coco the first time. I was like, I love the way the mechanics of this world works, and it's one of those things where it's like Disney doesn't explore their properties enough sometimes, and then they explore other properties way too much. Um, I want like some Coco thing. Like I want something that shows me more of this world and how it functions and how it works and shows me the mechanics because like I want to see, are there famous people here? Like where are they? Because there are definitely some people who have never been forgotten. So they should be floating around. And where are they? So, like, use real context, use real, authentic people. But I don't know, it's a cute story. I love Remember Me as a song. I actually like it way better when it's played slower. That's just me. Like the tender moments when it's just played lightly on guitar. Um, I think the song actually sounds better and it works better for me. Like acoustically played slower, it's like, oh, that was the way it was meant to be played. Of course, that's the way it was meant to be played, you know. Um, and that the up tempo I'm sure is nice and culturally representative, and it's fun. Benjamin Bratt's having fun with it, but I do really enjoy uh, the slow version. um, Remember me, although we say goodbye. Yeah, I like that. Anyway, it's only like a minute long, by the way, so I'm not saying that this film necessarily uh, that this is one of the great Oscar choices of all time, but it's a pretty song and it's impactful and it means something. So Coco always brings back all these like weird memories for me every time I think about it because it was this very specific point in my life where it marked like I can tie this to specific moments of my last of doing things while I was like losing what I'd been diagnosed and I was losing my vision. And I was like, well, that's the last time I'm doing that. That's the last time I'm doing this, you know? And it's such a weird experience because I was in the theater forever that day. Uh, Way longer than anybody ever expected to be. Um, and just, yeah. So I'm glad I got to see it again on Disney Plus without anything in front of it. Not even the Pixar short. I love it. There's not even, you just go straight to Coco. Perfect. Thank you. Like this just cut, no trailers, nothing. Just, I'm in Coco. Great. There's a kid, he wants to be, he wants to be a musician. His family doesn't want to be him to be a musician. He can't figure out why. And eventually he wants to enter this talent show, but he needs to get this great guitar and get the blessing of this. Anyway, so like there's this whole journey he has to go on just to perform in a talent show, just to get his parents' acceptance that he wants to be a musician, and he learns the true history of his family and saves his great grandfather in the process. That's Coco. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. Watch it with the family. It's great for this time of year. The audio description is really nice. It definitely highlighted as much of the colorfulness in the vibrance that I remembered from seeing Coco, of this world, and sort of the cartoonish nature of the, you know, the skeletons and everything, and that he bumps into, and everybody that, and then he has to sort of appear like one, um so yeah, it's all really interesting and fun, and I love Coco. So it's not my favorite Pixar movie, but it's up there. I think I did my Pixar rankings, and I think this was like right around 10, I think, on the Pixar list. So I think it's always gonna be high for me because it always has these other external factors that are tied to it. So it's almost like it's hard to drag down. Like this film means so much to me for several other reasons, that I often rate high for nostalgic films, for films from my past. But this film isn't that old. It's not even 10 years. So, but it's already got that attached to it, that nostalgic factor. So, um, yeah, last movie I saw in theaters, by myself, and was Coco. I did, people took me to the theaters a couple times, and I tried struggling with the screen for a little while after that. You know, because big screen, I could still kind of see shadows moving and stuff for a while. And then eventually, when that was sort of a moot point, I took a break for a while and had sort of a little bit of a crisis of why am I doing this? And now I'm here. So yeah, it's weird to be here talking about Coco. But anyway, that's Halloween. It's spooky season, and I hope you guys enjoy Coco and enjoyed my weird review slash uh, word vomit story about my life and why Coco means something to me while holding a flashlight in the dark. Uh, so thanks for watching. I'm giving Coco an A minus. I will see you guys on the other side.